Hello, and welcome to the virtual Fairfield Museum. My name is Walt Matis, and my title at the museum is Program and Volunteer Coordinator, which means that I am responsible for coordinating volunteers and docents to programs as we do them. But right now, the museum is actually closed to the public. And so we are working, the staff is working to create these virtual programs for you to enjoy and to appreciate some of Fairfield's history. So today's episode of Where's Walt, I am going to be here at the intersection of Cross Highway and Reading Road. And the reason that I'm here in the Greenfield section of Fairfield is to talk a little bit about the history of Fairfield in the American Revolution. A little bit about Greenfield's history. Greenfield is established as a parish in 1725, which at that time it becomes the fourth parish in the town. The original, of course, is Prime Parish. And then there's Stratfield West Parish, which is interesting because West Parish is actually the section of Fairfield that went all the way to the Saugatuck River. So roughly about 5 miles from where I'm standing right now was actually the western edge. The Saugatuck River is actually the western edge of Fairfield, and then pretty much a straight line from the Saugatuck River north forms the border between Fairfield and Norwalk at that time. So when Westport is created, it's actually created out of part of Fairfield and part of Norwalk. And then the fourth parish is going to be Greenfield Parish. Now, some of this area had already been used for farmland or wood gathering because in 1670, all the land north of today, what would be the line of basically Longlots Road and Brookside Drive and Fairfield Woods Road, Wilson Street. There, actually, you could take a ruler and put it on there, and it forms almost a straight line across what was historically Fairfield. Is broken up into what's called the long lots, and so at that time, a lot of that area is actually given to people of the town so that they have access to it, but it doesn't become its own parish until 1725. It actually has a church fairly soon thereafter, the Congregational Church. The current church that is on the parade, as it was known historically, the Greenfield Hill Green area, was built in 1855. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about this particular intersection, this corner here, and its connection to the American Revolution. In April of 1775, 22nd of April to be exact, word reaches Fairfield about the events that have transpired on April 19th, 1775, which would be the British March on Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, that sets off the American Revolution. And when word reaches Fairfield, a Captain Diamond will recruit or bring together about 30 to 50 militia, and they will march to the relief of Boston, the aid of Boston. Now, Fairfield had already kind of gotten involved. We were already supporting Boston. In October of 1774, the town meeting decided to send rye and wheat to Boston, which at that time the port had been blockaded, and so Fairfield was supporting at that time already. But so when the troops, when they go up to Massachusetts, they're involved in the continuing events that are there. And then we move into 1776. Now, 1776, for the period of the American Revolution, is a little bit of a mixed bag. We do, of course, have the July 4th independence, Declaration of Independence. But basically, everything after that, August through December, goes fairly poorly for George Washington and his Continental forces. During that time, the British basically capture New York City, most of the environs around it, and eventually will march themselves all the way down through New Jersey. Basically, they get put into check at the end of 76 and early 77 with Washington's surprise attacks at both Trenton and Princeton. So 1777 starts with this kind of everything's in a bit of a holding pattern. Sir William Howe, General of the Crown Forces, commanding officer of the Crown Forces, knows he has to do something, and this is getting a little out of hand. And so what 1777 sort of becomes known as to the British soldiers as the year of the hangman, and it had to do with the fact that it had all the sevens. And anybody who's ever played hangman, right? It's that look of where they, have the hanging. So it was known as the year of the hangman. It was believed to be the big year that the British were going to kind of end this entire rebellion and put things to rest. And one of the ways that they planned on doing this was a somewhat secret plan to send British troops to march on Danbury, Connecticut. And it was considered a secret plan. They had General William Tryon to be in command, and he was given almost 2,000 troops from a group of different regiments to basically attack Danbury. Now, it's interesting to note that on April 12th, 1777, Goldsellick-Silliman received word from the Committee of Safety in Connecticut that there was concern that there was going to be an attack on Danbury. They had some sources, some information that was giving them this, but it wasn't the first time that this had been said. And nobody really knew exactly when it would happen. But on the morning of April 25th, 1777, 2,000 Crown troops under Tryon begin their landing about 5 p.m. at Cedar Point, which was in Westport Parish. Today it's Campo Beach, Westport. It takes about 4 to 5 hours to land all the troops. There are actually 10 dragoons, which are troops on horseback, as well as 6 3-pound cannons, which are also brought. And so they don't actually begin their march to Danbury until about 11:30 that evening. So the evening of the 25th, they begin their march. Now they're led by a unique group of soldiers. And the reason I say they're unique is they're actually a loyalist regiment. It's known as the Prince of Wales American Regiment. And it's made up of soldiers, many of whom are actually from Connecticut, but also in particular Fairfield County, also troops from Westchester County. So these are people that know the area. Many of them either lived here or had family here, and so were very well aware of where they were marching to. Part of the other side of having them in the fore was because General Tryon believes that as his troops, the British troops, these loyalists march through this area, that loyalists will come swarming to the British flag. He felt that there were more loyalists than patriots, and that this would be the result during the invasion. So they begin their march at 11:30. They don't get very far before they're actually fired upon. A group of patriots hide behind a wall and basically wait until the first part of the column reaches them, which of course is that the Prince of Wales American Regiment, and they are actually fired upon and take the first casualties of the invasion itself. So, but it's very short. It's basically a shoot and run moment, and the casualties are taken back to the ships, which are still waiting at Cedar Point, Campo, today, and the column moves on. Now, part of the reason that I chose this spot today is that at about 2:30 in the morning on the 26th of April, that column, roughly 2,000 troops, will actually pause. They will stay here for roughly 5 hours. So somewhere between 2:30 and 7:30 in the morning, this area is actually an encampment, if you will, for the British Army. And so this area, and we don't know exactly where they were in what directions. Today, the Merritt Parkway is very, very close to the spot at which I'm standing. So obviously that was time, but it would have been slightly farther north. But once again, they're here for about 5 hours, and then they will begin their march again. They will begin to march to the north, straight up Reading Road. They encounter different experiences as they go. People have different experiences with them, maybe I should say. And part of the reason for that is they're not really an invading army in the truest sense. They're not here to conquer per se, as to get to Danbury, where when they get to Danbury, Danbury is a storage site for the Continental Army. And so they're there to destroy those stores, the things that are being kept for the Continental Army at that location. So they're not really here to take everything, and they're still, remember, General Tryon's idea is that there's going to be all these loyalists that are going to come to them. So their encounters at different homes are slightly different. And to put that into some comparison, there's an account of a gentleman by the name of Moses Burr, who's supposed to be a very ardent loyalist. And when General Tryon arrives, he invites him and possibly some of his officers to come in and dine in his home. And he brings out casks of cider for the troops and entertains them in style. There's also a story of a gentleman by the name, of Samuel Wakeman. And Samuel Wakeman has a very different experience. In Samuel Wakeman's home, the British will smash the butt of a musket through a clock face. They'll damage other things in the home. They'll even steal his oxen and take the oxen with them on their continued march. So they will continue through what is today Easton. At that time, it's known as North Fairfield Parish. So it's actually part of Fairfield. They will march to Reading, which had been part of Fairfield until 1767. And then eventually they'll reach Danbury on the afternoon of the 26th. They will take over the town. There's only about 50 troops in the actual town to defend against these 2,000 soldiers which are entering the town. So there's really not much resistance. And then they take over the town. There is a great story about a young lady. She's about 16 years old. Her name is Sybil Ludington. And Sybil Ludington's father is a colonel in the militia. And she will go out and try to help raise the troops, to alert the troops, in a sense similar to Paul Revere's ride on the evening of April 18th, 1775. But she will do hers on the evening of the 26th of 1777. And she actually rides about 40 miles in total during her ride, and does aid in raising the troops and getting the troops aware and out to where they need to be. And that's an important side to the story, because although the raid on Danbury is arguably successful, there is 4,000 to 5,000 barrels of supplies, foodstuffs, and other material that's destroyed, roughly 1,600 tents, as well as 5,000 pairs of shoes. So there's a lot of equipment that gets destroyed, which the Continental Army desperately needs. So in that sense, the raid is a success. But what is happening during what's now already roughly, almost 2 days at this point, march, is that the locals, the militia of the area, are beginning to come together, and grow in number. By this point, there's about 500 troops on the morning of the 27th. Militia troops. They are commanded by Generals Wooster, General Silliman, and Benedict Arnold. Yes, that Benedict Arnold. Who at that time has not made his choice to change over to the British side. He is still a Patriot general at that point. So about 8 o'clock in the morning, British troops will march out of Danbury, and they decide not to come back the same route that they had marched in on. They decide to march through what at the time was Ridgebury and then into Ridgefield. And because the militia now has somewhat of an idea of where the British are marching, they begin to attack them. And the first attack starts about 11 o'clock on the morning of the 27th, and they will attack them again about noon. Those are forces under General Wooster. Meanwhile, General Silliman and General Arnold are actually going to get to Ridgefield. And in Ridgefield, they're going to build inherently a barricade across the road. And so as the British forces are coming through Ridgefield, they encounter this barricade. And there is a pretty hot battle that goes on for a period of firing and shooting between the British forces and the Patriots. But the Patriots are eventually driven off, and the British take Ridgefield. So during that, the British pause for the evening. They will stay overnight in Ridgefield. The militia is sort of dispersed. Some go home, some gather at other spots. And Benedict Arnold thinks he knows the direction in which the Crown forces will actually go back. And it involves a bridge across the Saugatuck River. And so he sets up cannon over on a hill overlooking that bridge in the area around the bridge, hoping to be able to catch the British out in the open and fire upon them. There's some discussion about how the British, or why the British choose not to use the bridge. There is an account that does say that they are informed by a loyalist, although the loyalist is not named, that the artillery has been placed on the hill and that the bridge is under these guns. So instead, the British choose to ford a river, which may also have been known to, remember what we were saying about the Prince of Wales American regiment. Some of them are local, and so perhaps they knew that there was this fording place. And so they ford the river. And so basically on the morning of the 28th, or about noon, I guess, is about the time they ford, they avoid the trap, which Arnold felt he had laid, and they continue. But now all the militia knows basically where they're going. They have to get back to Cedar Point, to Campo Beach, because that's where the ships are that are going to take them away. So they have to return to that point. And so basically what happens after that is a running firefight. The militia are basically able to line the road and fire at the rear guard of the British forces, the Crown forces, as they're attempting to make their way to the ships. Eventually, they get to the ships, and the ships, of course, have artillery. They are able to fire. Plus, there are Marines aboard the ships, which are able to bring on land and help cover the eventual disembarkation of the troops onto the ships, who will sail. Those ships will sail about 6 p.m. From off the coast. There are some interesting side notes. As we said, General Tryon, the commander of the actual raid in April of 1777, will return to the Connecticut coast in in July of 1779 as commander of the force that will attack New Haven, Fairfield, and Green's Farms, and as well as Norwalk. And one of the lessons learned from this attack was to not march as far away from your ships. And so those raids will all remain on the coast. The other side note to that is in that attack on Fairfield in 1779, the British Crown forces never get as far north as Greenfield. So many of the people who go to escape from the Fairfield Center area, which is where the British forces basically control, will come up to the Greenfield area. And afterwards, so Fairfield is burned on July 8th as the Crown forces leave. Many of those individuals who had lived in that area find themselves or choose to live here in Greenfield or other northerly parts of the parish which were not touched during that raid. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tidbit about this section of Greenfield. Once again, we're bringing these to you virtually, so the museum itself is not actually open at this time, but we're hoping that you do enjoy these. If you want to help or support, you can certainly do so by becoming a member or making a donation. You could go to our website at fairfieldmuseum.org or fairfieldhs.org and get more information there. So once again, thank you so very much. Hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you soon on the History Trail. Thank you.